U.S. officials say President Donald Trump has directed aides to plan for a prolonged blockade of Iran, aiming to choke off the regime's revenue in a high-stakes effort to force Tehran into conceding on its nuclear ambitions. The United Arab Emirates says it will exit OPEC and the wider OPEC Plus alliance on May 1st, a move aimed at advancing its long-term energy strategy and meeting growing global demand, the country says. An appeals court on Wednesday raised former President Yoon Suk-yeol's prison term from 5 to 7 years over obstruction of justice and related charges tied to his failed martial law attempt. We start in the U.S., where the Trump administration appears poised to intensify its pressure campaign against Iran, with plans to extend its naval blockade of the country's ports. Our Jo Young-un leads our coverage tonight.
According to the Wall Street Journal on Tuesday, Trump recently directed aides to prepare for an extended blockade of Iranian ports. Citing U.S. officials, the report said Trump will continue pressuring Iran's economy and oil exports by restricting its ports. Officials said Trump viewed his other options, resuming military strikes or stepping away from the conflict altogether, as carrying greater political and strategic risks. Still, the strategy could prolong a conflict that has already pushed gas prices up, hurt Trump's approval ratings, and raise concerns among Republicans ahead of this year's midterm elections. In a Truth Social post on Tuesday, Trump claimed Iran had told the U.S. it was in a state of collapse, suggesting the current pressure campaign is severely damaging Tehran's economy. A senior U.S. official said Iran is struggling to store unsold oil and has recently reached out to Washington. Meanwhile, Reuters reported that U.S. intelligence agencies are assessing how Iran will respond to a declaration of a unilateral victory by Trump in the ongoing conflict. The report says some administration officials are concerned the war could become a growing political burden for the White House and deepen Republican concerns in the upcoming elections. The intelligence community aims to understand the implication of Trump potentially pulling back, while rapid de-escalation could pose renewed threats to U.S. allies in the region. Adding to the uncertainty, the Financial Times reported the growing divisions within Iran's leadership over whether Tehran should negotiate with Washington over its nuclear program. Iran said the conflict is far from over, with an Iranian military spokesperson saying that Tehran does not consider the conflict to be finished. Jo Young-un, Arirang News.
The United Arab Emirates plans to exit OPEC next May, a move expected to shake global energy markets and weaken the cartel's long-standing grip on oil supply as its third largest producer steps away. Park Chun-han has more.
The United Arab Emirates, one of the world's largest oil suppliers, has decided to leave the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries, or OPEC. As of February, the UAE was the group's third largest producer behind Saudi Arabia and Iraq, pumping around 3.6 million barrels of oil per day, roughly 12% of the organization's total output. Its departure is categorically different from previous exits when Qatar left in 2019, Ecuador in 2020, and Angola in 2024. While the previous exit's impact was limited, this time it is not. The UAE has the capacity to produce up to 4.8 million barrels per day and has plans to expand that to 5 million by 2027. But OPEC's quota system limited its output to about 3 to 3.5 million, leaving a lot of potential revenue untapped as it supported Saudi Arabia's strategy of keeping prices high. With no resolution in sight, Abu Dhabi chose the country's long-term strategic and economic vision over OPEC's. According to the BBC, OPEC once controlled 85% of global oil trade in the 1970s, but that figure has fallen to around 50% today. This means the group still holds leverage but no longer has a monopoly. Losing the flexibility to control oil supply will eventually weaken OPEC's ability to respond to price shocks going forward. While other OPEC members are not yet showing signs of following suit, tensions are rising inside the group over Saudi Arabia's dominant decision-making. In the short term, the ongoing disruption in the Strait of Hormuz limits any immediate market impact. However, once stability returns, the UAE's ability to ramp up production freely could put downward pressure on oil prices and further erode OPEC's leverage in a world increasingly turning toward alternative energy sources. 박준환, Arirang News.
The commander of U.S. forces here in South Korea has proposed a new comprehensive security network linking Seoul, Tokyo, and Manila. Lee In-jin has more.
The head of U.S. Forces Korea, Army General Xavier Brunson, has outlined a new potential strategy to combine the military capabilities of South Korea, Japan, and possibly the Philippines to create a faster and more flexible network system across land, sea, and air, as well as the space, cyber, and electromagnetic arenas. In an interview with the Japan Times published Tuesday, Brunson said these complementary capabilities have to be linked into a kill web that achieves combined joint all-domain effects. He added that it would enable a more coordinated response to regional security threats from North Korea, China, and Russia. Brunson emphasized that South Korea, Japan, and the Philippines, all U.S. alliances, cannot afford to exist in isolation, but connected, the overlapping strengths leave no single axis for an adversary to plan against. Brunson also said the cooperation would fundamentally change how the U.S. and its allies organize in the Indo-Pacific, potentially positioning South Korea at the center as a regional defense hub due to its location and advanced industrial base. Japan would contribute advanced combat and surveillance capabilities and control over key maritime choke points, while the Philippines would provide strategic access linking the Pacific and Indian Oceans. However, most importantly, Commander Brunson highlighted that the kill web only works if every node sees the same picture, especially at a time when modern conflicts are often shaped before conventional fighting begins, requiring even quicker detection and action, as well as trust. Despite all three countries being U.S. allies, such a strategy would not be without challenges, with complex relationships, differences in operational systems, and legal regulations, all barriers that would need to be overcome. Lee In-jin, Arirang News.
Having scrapped its long-standing ban on the export of lethal weapons, Japan has moved to the next stage to revise its three key security documents that outline the nation's defense strategy. And the necessity of acquiring nuclear-powered submarines also came up. Cha Yun-kyung reports.
Tokyo has scrapped its decades-old ban on exporting lethal weapons, aiming to bolster allies as security tensions with China and North Korea intensify. Following this move, the Japanese government has launched discussions to revise three key security-related documents by the end of this year. During the first meeting of an expert panel at the Prime Minister's office in Tokyo, voices emerged calling for a re-examination of the three non-nuclear principles. That is Japan's long-standing national policy of not possessing, producing, or permitting the introduction of nuclear weapons. Some experts also advocated for the acquisition of nuclear-powered submarines to secure an ultimate nuclear deterrent. Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi, who has previously expressed openness to reviewing non-nuclear principles, did not directly mention possessing nuclear weapons during the meeting. However, she made it clear that Tokyo would significantly bolster its defense capabilities, stating that the revision of these documents is a crucial task that will determine the fate of Japan. Meanwhile, a sense of distancing from non-nuclear principles was felt as the Japanese government sent a state minister for foreign affairs to read a statement on behalf of the government at the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty Review Conference at the UN headquarters in New York. In response, Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Lin Jian issued a harsh criticism, questioning whether Japan is speeding down the path of remilitarization to once again become a calamity for East Asia. Cha Yun-kyung, Arirang News.
Friction over e-commerce giant Coupang may be stalling security talks between Seoul and Washington. We review the recent developments and highlight the crucial issues at hand. For this, we have our correspondent Oh Soo-young in the studio with us. Welcome back, Soo-young.
Lovely to see you this evening.
So, Soo-young, let's first start with the latest on how the Coupang dispute has flared up again. I hear the government is considering responding to a letter by U.S. lawmakers, right?
That's right. Last week, 54 U.S. lawmakers sent a letter to Korean ambassador to the U.S., Kang Kyung-ah, calling the scrutiny of Coupang's data leak a whole-of-government assault. And the e-commerce company's data breach last year exposed the personal information of around 33.7 million users. That's around 65% of the population. The response in Korea has followed legal and democratic procedures involving data protection officials, police, the Fair Trade Commission, and tax authorities. However, Coupang has been diligently lobbying to visible success in DC, endorsing its stance that Seoul is unfairly targeting a US company. According to media reports, Washington may have raised the legal treatment of Coupang founder Pom Kim, signaling that this could affect the mood for bilateral security talks. And National Security Advisor Wi Sung-lak, he has since acknowledged the Coupang issue is affecting security consultations, whilst very much stressing that the two should remain separate.
You know, that's the concern, isn't it? I mean, what kind of talks are at stake at the moment?
Well, these are follow-up consultations following last year's bilateral joint fact sheet. Now, this involves cooperation on naval shipbuilding, nuclear-powered submarines, uranium enrichment, and spent fuel reprocessing. For us reporters covering diplomatic affairs in Seoul, these talks should have begun at least 2 months ago and should ideally be progressing with speed, especially at a critical time when Washington's asking its allies to expand defense capacity and also invest in US industries. Now, Korea's ready to be that key partner with a $300 billion investment pledge and the industrial base to support US shipbuilding and nuclear supply chains. In naval shipbuilding, Korea's world-class shipyards offer capacity that the US currently lacks in scale, and cooperating in areas like fuel reprocessing. Now, that would give the US a reliable partner to strengthen supply chains and also meet rising energy demands.
So this unlocks a new level of cooperation. It allows and it encourages and works towards less reliance on Russia. I think there's also a significant knock-on effect into the civil nuclear space. Just the fact that we're working more on all things nuclear, I think will also build the natural conversation towards more cooperation on small modular reactors, on traditional reactors, in a space that again represents, over $1 trillion of market over the next 25 years.
Now, the technical discussions are ready to start with between Seoul's top nuclear energy negotiators, Ambassador Yoon and his deputy Kim Joo-un, and their Washington counterparts.
But I guess this commercial dispute is part of U.S. policy against digital regulation in general, right?
Right. So for Coupang, their issue really coincides with America's greater push to protect its digital regulations, its digital industries. The U.S. has raised similar concerns over digital regulations in the European Union and launched Section 301 investigations into countries like Brazil. Last December, the State Department announced visa restrictions targeting officials accused of pressuring U.S. tech platforms and backing digital regulation in Europe. So this could well demonstrate just how far Washington's prepared to go to prevent rules or any kind of limitations that could hinder the growth of U.S. platforms. According to the Bureau of Economic Analysis, the U.S. digital economy accounted for 10.3% of GDP in 2021, or roughly $2.4 trillion in value added. Now, that is on par with manufacturing, which accounts for about 10.9% of GDP, but has fallen sharply from around 25% in the 1950s to, again, roughly 11% today, alongside a goods trade deficit of more than $1 trillion. So you can see that digital services are America's crown jewel, really globally dominant, but also heavily reliant on overseas markets. Nearly 60% of revenue depends on non-US markets.
That is why for Coupang, this is a timely dispute.
That's right, it very much is, Tammy. I mean, the issue for now, of course, again, coincides with America's move to protect its digital sector. Washington has said that network usage policies create unfair costs, while Seoul says that related legislation has not actually been enacted and that it's ensuring enforcement of laws, including the case of Coupang, is applied equally under domestic law. Now, experts say that commercial issues inevitably do rise time and time again within the alliance, but the bigger picture should really override these kind of short-term bilateral irritants.
It's not just about the security relationship, it's also this technological relationship and this very advanced relationship. That's where we should be heading. To do that, we have to find a way to manage Korea's regulatory evolution, and the U.S. has to understand how Korea works such that they can match that pace and that evolution and profit from it. Really, I mean, it's a win-win.
And while I have been assured, Tammy, that the alliance itself will remain very much unshaken and forward-looking, but of course politics does often complicate progress. And well, for those with vested interests, I suppose the question is, like, is it worth it? Like, is it worth tying, you know, this isolated corporate case with a completely separate issue that's actually vital to the long-term interests of both countries?
That is a good point. We'll have to continue to watch how the two cases unfold. Thank you for your time tonight, Soo-young.
Always a pleasure to be here.
A day after the appellate verdict for former First Lady Kim Gun-hee, the court today delivered its second instance ruling in the case against former President Yoon Suk-yeol on charges that included the obstruction of his arrest. Our correspondent An Sung-jin has the details.
7 years. A special appellate panel at the Seoul High Court dedicated to insurrection-related cases sentenced former President Yoon Suk-yeol to 7 years for obstructing his own arrest and related charges on Wednesday afternoon.
The defendant is hereby sentenced to 7 years of imprisonment.
This is more than the first ruling, which was 5 years, but less than what prosecutors had appealed for, which was 10 years. Yoon's defense team stated that they will be appealing. The appellate ruling for Yoon, which began at 3 p.m., was live-streamed, and the verdict was handed down at around 4 p.m. The court cited a range of factors in making the decision: violation of the Presidential Security Act for ordering the deletion of secure phone records, obstruction of martial law declaration documents, abuse of power, and special obstruction of public officials and execution of duties during Yoon's first attempt to block arrest. This marks the first appellate decision tied to allegations surrounding the December 3rd martial law declaration and the inaugural case handled by the court's insurrection-focused division. Former President Yoon Suk-yeol faced multiple charges, including allegedly mobilizing the Presidential Security Service to obstruct the execution of an arrest warrant by the Corruption Investigation Office for high-ranking officials. He's also accused of convening a flawed meeting ahead of declaring the emergency martial law and drafting the martial law proclamation, destroying it, and ordering the deletion of secure phone call records. In the initial trial held in January, the court sentenced him to 5 years in prison, which the prosecutors from the special counsel appealed, arguing it was too lenient, leading to this appeal. Meanwhile, in a separate case on charges of leading an insurrection, Yoon was sentenced to life imprisonment in February, with the appellate trial currently underway. An Sung-jin, Arirang News.
Korea's small and medium-sized enterprises posted record exports in the first quarter, driven by the strong demand for cosmetics and semiconductors. The Ministry of SMEs and Startups said on Wednesday that outbound shipments rose 9.1% year-on-year to $29.8 billion, which is the highest ever for a first quarter. Cosmetics exports led the gains, rising by over 20% to $2.18 billion. and setting a new quarterly record. Now, semiconductor shipments also remained strong, surging by more than 50% to $1.13 billion. China retained its position as the top export market, with shipments rising about 10%. But exports to the U.S. and the Middle East declined, with the Middle East seeing a sharp drop amid the ongoing conflict there. K-pop concerts are delivering a major boost to the Korea's tourism economy. Recent data shows the BTS effect is providing a much-needed boost to the economy, as fans tend to stay longer and spend more compared to the average tourist. Our Jung Hae-rim tells us more.
Global K-pop superstar group BTS has proved its significance in Korea's tourism economy. According to a report released today by the Ministry of Culture, Sports and Tourism, foreign visitors who traveled to Korea for BTS concerts stayed longer and spent significantly more than the average tourist. Data from the Gwanghwamun Square concert in March shows that foreign visitors stayed an average of 8.7 days, which is 2.9 days longer than the general tourist average of 6.1. Their spending averaged 3.53 million won, or some $2,300 per person, nearly 1.5 times the typical tourist. The impact was seen more concentrated in local neighborhoods. In Daehwadong, Goyang, where the band performed earlier this month, the number of foreign visitors skyrocketed 35-fold compared to the same period last year, from about 1,000 to about 48,000. Foreign car transactions climbed from roughly 8.9 million won to over 330 million won, or about $228,000, marking a 38-fold surge compared to the same period a year earlier. Experts attribute this to the BTS The City program, which links the concert venue with landmarks in Seoul's Yongsan and Myeongdong. Instead of just attending a concert, fans are engaging in stay-type tourism, exploring filming locations and museum exhibits. Experts say rising interest in K-culture has turned into an engine, driving a paradigm shift in Korea's tourism industry.
With BTS resuming group activities, global fans are turning their focus back to Korea. We're seeing a massive influx of international tourists whenever these major concerts take place. It's a very positive sign that proves the real-world impact of Korea's cultural assets through hard data.
The government is now taking this blueprint nationwide. To coincide with the upcoming BTS Busan concerts in June, a special welcome week will be held from June 1st to the 15th. Jung Hae-rim, Arirang News.
Gyeongbokgung Palace will open its gates for nighttime tours next month, offering visitors a chance to experience Seoul's royal heritage after opening hours. The Cultural Heritage Administration says the evening program will run from May 13th to June 14th, with visitors allowed in from 7 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. Major halls, including Gwanghwamun and Gyeonghaeru Pavilion, will be open. Traditional court music performances will also take place on select dates, adding to the nighttime experience. Online reservations will open May 4th at 10 a.m. on Interpark Ticket, with a limit of 3,000 visitors per day. Now, admission is free for visitors wearing traditional hanbok, seniors aged 65 and over, and young children. Curtains have gone up for the 27th Jeonju International Film Festival tonight. Korea's largest showcase of independent films will be on for 10 days, with a total of 237 screen productions from 54 nations. This year, the festival also includes a special program in honor of the late actor An Sung-gi, who passed away this January. A total of 421 films from 70 countries will compete in the international competition section, while 10 films, including 4 documentaries, will compete in the Korean category.
We're continuing to see classic spring weather with big temperature swings. It may feel a bit chilly in the mornings and evenings, but tomorrow highs will climb to around 20 degrees, right near seasonal averages. But with the large temperature swings, be sure to dress in layers. Meanwhile, dry conditions are sticking around. A dry weather advisory has been issued for parts of Seoul, and it remains in place across Chungcheong-do, Jeollabuk-do, and Gyeongsang-buk-do regions. So with ongoing wildfire risks, extra caution is definitely needed. On mountainous areas of Jeju Island, light showers less than 5 millimeters are a possibility through early tomorrow morning. And from tomorrow night into early Friday, some rain is expected along the east coast and parts of Gyeongsang-do province. Tomorrow, Seoul will start the day at 9 degrees, Chuncheon at 6 degrees, Busan at 13 degrees. Then by the afternoon, Seoul will get up to 22 degrees, as will Chuncheon, Daejeon, and Daegu. Looking ahead, warm spring weather will continue throughout the weekend, with rain forecast for southern regions on Sunday.
That is all we have for tonight. I'm Kim Dami. From all of us here at Arirang, thanks for watching and good night.